Would anyone like to kick off? Questions from the floor. Jason.
Yeah. Patrick, I think what you presented is correct, and in terms of trying to benchmark countries according to different objective criteria. But what appears to me to be, so it's important that the correlation between a country's level of IP and other beneficial consequences and things like that. But what seems to me a far more important indicator is the direction of change within the index. So for example, South Africa has been progressively sliding further and further down both the rank and the rating of the IP index, and to me that is a very ominous indicator for the future of FDI and job creation and things like that. Is there some way of kind of tracking that that over time, as opposed to providing a snapshot at each point?
Sure, it is a great point, and I think equally important to looking at a country's own performance and whether it goes up or down as a percentage of the total score, because our indicators have changed somewhat over time as we refine the tool. But equally important is the performance relative to other countries. And a good example would be China, which I think has improved incrementally in each of the editions of the index that we've done, not only in terms of its own scores, but relative to its peers, certainly among the BRICS countries. And what's happened in China, I think, has been interesting because they've made a conscious decision that they need to invest in the mechanics of IP to foster domestic innovative activity. What's been interesting is that they're putting some of the legal tools in place, but at the same time they've continued to discriminate and pick winners and losers within that economy. And I think what they're going to find is to sort of overcome the hurdle and truly foster an innovative economy at home. They're going to need to do that on a non-discriminatory basis, which I think goes directly to Jitain's point, is if IP rights aren't transferable, fully licensable, then you can never get the dynamic benefits. So yeah, I think we all need to watch what other countries are doing, and if you want to be at an effective participant in what's a very competitive economic space, you do have to put yourself among the top performers.
So Patrick, I've got a question for you as well. Do you foresee in the next year or so that you guys are adding additional indicators? And if you know what those indicators would be, is something like indigenous knowledge and geographical indicators some of the things that you would want to measure in the future?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Actually, we are adding several new indicators next year, in fact, an entire new category, and it goes directly to some of the points that you made about the areas where South Africa has been investing in its own framework. We're going to have 5 new indicators related to a systemic efficiency category, which will look at whether there's streamlining of IP registrations, whether there's education, an active program to educate entrepreneurs how to leverage IP rights, about the ability to commercialize IP and to use it as a fiduciary asset and attracting capital. So many of the things that you mentioned that South Africa is working hard to provide domestically, we're trying to measure that, because I think as we looked at our index, if you think of it as rungs of a ladder, I think we found we were missing some of the initial rungs and wanted both to be able to give credit where it was due, but also to provide a more complete picture. Geographical indication, I know that's a great deal of interest to a lot of people. Unfortunately, it's not an area that we've looked at yet, but I'm confident it'll probably be there in the near future.
Yeah, I know the US is not a great fan of GIs, so I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't want to pour cold water on the sort of supposedly good work on the IP framework policy. But it seems rather ironic then that we should be presented with a copyright amendment bill when there's a policy to be published. So are government departments not speaking to each other? How does a situation like that come about, where you have a copyright amendment bill with far-reaching consequences when there's no policy document yet? I mean, are they singing off the same hymn sheet or not?
Thank you so much for the question, and Sasi, you can maybe add on to it when I'm finished. So the draft framework makes reference to the copyright bill and to the IKS bill that is presented by Department of Science and Technology as well. What the draft framework has said is they've recognized that a lot of work has gone into these frameworks and they don't want to halt that process while the policy is being in place, while the policy is being put in place. So to answer your questions, government departments are talking now to one another much more than they did a few years back, thanks to this consultative process that we've been taking. So the copyright bill, the IKS bill is mentioned, is recognized as part of the draft IP policy, and we will hope to be able to streamline that in the near future.
I have a question for Professor Kelly. So innovation in South African drug development is at quite a nascent stage at the moment. What do you think it would take to scale up and to develop an industry that's focused on innovation rather than generic based, with more value add? What do you think it would take to sort of develop that scale?
I wish I had an easy answer to that question. But I think one of the important ingredients, I think, based on the models we've seen in other places, I think is private sector involvement. I think this has been, at this point in time, I think has been lacking. A lot of the support, we need to give credit where it's due to government. A lot of the support actually, in this space now has really come from government. However, there is also a necessary responsibility initially, at least, to be able not just to create the environment in which this type of research can flourish, but also the infrastructure. I think what people don't realize is we can talk about a lot of things that we can do or not do, but one of the fundamentals is having the right infrastructure in place, but also at this point in time in our history, because we haven't had a track record of history of doing this, it will take, I think, several more years, I think decades, to achieve a level of performance where we have a critical mass of people with experience. I think one of the big lessons that we've learned in doing what we do, I can be naive. If I'm an academic person, of course, but before setting up H3D, I actually had to take a sabbatical and go to Pfizer just to learn what does it take to do this. And I think one of the ingredients, I can talk about the whole day, talk about what are big lessons. But one of the biggest lessons we've learned from this, you need experience. And so what we've been able to do, and thanks to government support in having the infrastructure, and allowing us with a good university environment, we've been able to attract a number of our American colleagues who've spent, individually 38 plus years in the pharmaceutical industry in the West, who have come down here. And together we're contributing to really training the next generation. So I think it will take private sector involvement as well, as we've seen in other parts of the world. We just shouldn't be looking to share benefits, but it's also sharing risks. I think government is there to provide the environment, the infrastructure, but I think it's also the private sector to also chip in. And so we can also share risks, but then also share benefits. But more importantly, I think the Achilles heel of this country in many areas is the skills. Some of the things that we are reflecting on negatively on what we do is actually, not having enough skilled people, skilled to the right level to be able to understand what they need to do and translate, perhaps well-intentioned government policies. I think that is the challenge. That's what it will take. Private sector, consistent government support, infrastructure, but it's going to be a public-private partnership model.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thought? You know, I think Kelly's right to point to some of the practical factors, you know, behind, you know, medical life sciences innovation, you know, the technical expertise in the form of human capital, the infrastructure, you know, in terms of the research centers, the education behind both. But equally important are the political factors, you know, that enable investment. That as Kelly, I thought, very rightly pointed out, you know, it's such a high-risk area where the successes have to pay for a large pipeline of failures. And what governments can do to facilitate that risk-taking and investment is provide a vocal, you know, political commitment to the innovation and to the intellectual property that enables it. So, and where that's relevant, I think, to the policy debate, you know, and South Africa's been active multilaterally in terms of conversations at the World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, about you know, so-called TRIPS flexibilities, compulsory licensing, and those are important tools. But how the government talks about them determines how the private sector reacts. And so, if TRIPS flexibility means liberal or arbitrary use of compulsory licensing, you know, as a discretionary tool, then that creates a lot of uncertainty that tells a company better not take that risk, better not enter this market. On the other hand, if the government has a reasonable process in the law to be able to use TRIPS flexibilities where needed, but is vocally, you know, assuring innovators that these are going to be extraordinary circumstances, responding to real critical emergencies, then you can do that while maintaining the confidence of the innovative community. So I think, you know, as countries like South Africa talk about these flexibilities, they need to keep in mind both objectives.
Can I say something about IKS, because it's been mentioned here? I personally feel, and this is my opinion,
would you
that
define IKEA?
the indigenous knowledge bill or systems, sometimes also referred to as traditional knowledge because the terminology is not quite settled, I think it's one of the biggest red herrings around in South Africa, to be honest. And what I mean by that is there's no proof that we are suffering because indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge is being pilfered from South Africa. But it's a nice political issue. I think DST's approach is right to say that this is not, and of course they've backtracked from the initial draft. The initial draft was quite right in saying that this is not intellectual property as we know it. This is something different. Department of Trade and Industry wants to squeeze a square peg in a round hole and call this intellectual property. It is not intellectual property. The real problem I have is that on this IKS issue, we seem to want to bat on our own. And we want to plow our own furrow without international consensus. And this has a real consequence. And let me illustrate this by way of a simple example. I don't know if a lot of you have seen, there's this entrepreneur in the Eastern Cape who has a clothing line, Makosa. So he takes traditional Xhosa designs and he's made a knitwear range out of it. So he's on the platforms in Paris and London, on the catwalks there, showcasing what he's done. He's taken traditional stuff, inspiration from traditional stuff, and now sort of jazzed it up, made it relevant to a modern age. What the IKS bill will do is require that young entrepreneur now to speak to some government bureaucracy to get some permission to do what he's doing. And this type of hamstringing will only be applicable to that poor chap. So if he had lived in Australia, he can quite easily take inspiration from anywhere in the world and produce something. And why are we so preoccupied with people stealing our ideas? I can tell you now, you can walk out here, go into any Santon City shop there, you'll probably find a t-shirt that says Paris with the Eiffel Tower on it. Is that not cultural appropriation? Why are we so preoccupied about people taking inspiration from traditional things? There's a small subset of things that I think should be protected. So things that may have a religious, maybe, let's assume on the best case scenario, because of course Hoodia has been shown to be a damn squid, right? It doesn't work. But assume, let's say Hoodia was a success. What you do, or what that pharmaceutical company would do, is take that plant, spend, like Kelly says, probably hundreds of millions of dollars trying to isolate what the active ingredient is. And if they manage to do that, well, why shouldn't they get the protection? My point is that it actually potentially now opens another market. Today we live in a world where people want to eat organic and natural and bio this. That potentially opens the market for that indigenous community to produce this stuff, the natural stuff, on a wide scale and sell it as the natural product. So guess what? You can have a pharmaceutical company recouping something on the synthetic product, and you have now opened a product for the a market for the organic product. Life is not so binary. Oh, there's just pillaging going one way rather than another. You know. So the IKS debate for me is an uninformed debate. Really, I haven't been shown any examples in South Africa where indigenous knowledge has been exploited in a sort of rapacious manner.
Kelly, I think you wanted to...
Yeah, just add one quick point. I just wanted to echo, I think it's a really wonderful point that you made. It's very important. And I'll give a practical example of the artemisinin. So these are malaria drugs that have been used by China for thousands and thousands of years. But until in the early 70s, when people then figured out what the active pharmaceutical ingredient was, and then realized that actually you can't really make it to completely synthetic from scratch. That in fact, one of the raw materials you need to build on, to improve on the active ingredient, has to be extracted from the plant. And that is actually a wonderful example of how that industry has enabled agriculture in many parts of the world to grow that plant, because it's a source of this starting raw material, which then the pharmaceutical industry uses to derivatize things like that. So I think it's a very good example, because until that active pharmaceutical ingredient was nailed down in the 70s, the Chinese have been taking it for centuries. But look at how the industry has exploded and jobs being created, and it's a win-win. There's agriculture, and then there's also the pharmaceutical. So I'm just echoing that very, very important point.
Thank you. We'll break for lunch in a minute. Sorry, comment.
I have a question for Professor Lee. Tell me if I'm understanding you wrong. Are you saying we should not even attempt to protect our traditional knowledge, our traditional cultural expressions, our genetic resources in case? And that's why we ended up with the Hoodia case, because it was not protected. And therefore anybody could come and do whatever they want to do. And it's great. It opens up a whole big market for the Khoisans who have used this product for a long time. But if we didn't have the protection for them, there would not be benefit sharing from what the farmer was doing. So I need to understand when you say, maybe yes, we don't have, actually it's not true. It's not that we don't have anything that has been stolen in South Africa, as you know. Hoodia, Rooibos. And if we did not have intellectual property systems or laws that protected our those indigenous products, we wouldn't be benefiting from it.
It's not that I'm saying that there shouldn't be protection. I'm saying what type of protection do you want? The hoodie example, so if there's a herb that people have been using for generations to treat a cough, that is publicly available information. What you're trying to do now, when a pharmaceutical company comes along, they say, let's find out what it is. If there's anything, let's put it through a double-blind test, a placebo test, all those things. Why are you trying to shut them off? Why? What is it? What you can say, and this is, of course, what India has done, is what we shouldn't allow a pharmaceutical company to do is to claim something as new when it isn't new.
Okay.
So India has created almost an exclusive or exhaustive database of sort of traditional knowledge medicines. So when some pharmaceutical company tries unethically to claim something as novel, they can say to that patent office, sorry, we know about this. And that's what it should be. For the rest, to make a synthetic molecule out of it, I don't think there's a good basis to say that the community must benefit from that. On what basis? This is public knowledge. It's out there. The point about intellectual property, and this is where people get it wrong, intellectual property serves to incentivize innovation. And there's a trade-off. That's why we have 20 years. After that 20 years, that information falls into the public domain. Everybody can use it. What you're trying to do with IKS is saying, you know what, knowledge is out there, but we are now going to put it behind a paywall again. It's actually the converse of intellectual property. You are trying to take things that are in the public domain and have been for decades, sometimes hundreds of years, and now you're telling people they can't use it. That's not intellectual property as we know it. Then you are dealing with a different kettle of fish. Then you've got to ask yourself, what is it that we're seeking to protect? And like I say, the things that I can think of is something of religious significance. You know, where it might mean something. So there's a great example of in New Zealand, where the indigenous community there has a religious symbol. And Lego came out with this product. Some Lego figure that had this name of a god. And of course that indigenous community said, sorry, this is not acceptable. And of course Lego withdrew it. Now that type of thing I can agree with. This is something that has real sort of spiritual value to people, and they would feel deeply offended. But if it's indie art, which has existed for who knows how long, now a young entrepreneur comes along, wants to jazz it up, make some t-shirts, artwork. Why are we stopping that type of innovation? Having that person go through some government bureaucracy, and then there's a bun fight about who owns it. Is it really in the Indibele community? And we are really trying to reinvent the wheel for no good reason. We are actually putting impediments in front of young people. We should tell them to go to your communities, see what fantastic stuff reside within your knowledge base, and see if you can make it relevant to our society, and take it out there to the wider world. Showcase our fantastic ideas. That's the thing with indigenous knowledge.
Thank you. So coming to a close, just to bring us back to the general topic, perhaps you could say in a word, in a sentence, whether you're an optimist or a pessimist for South Africa's progress in this area. So, Patrick, I'll excuse you.
Do you really need me to answer that question?
That's one sentence.
Just keep it very brief. Thank you very much.
I am an optimist and a realist. If you allow me to indulge, and I won't go on forever, I get really amazed at the things that we Africans complain about. Let me give an example. We talk about all the natural resources that we have. You mine your copper, your platinum, or whatever indigenous knowledge that we have. But who stops us from exploiting those things on our own? If we have the means and the know-how to do it. So what we have to accept is that at this point in time, I'm not saying forever, at this point in time, we don't have the means and know-how to exploit them. Therefore, we should focus on benefit sharing. Because I would rather own 1% of 2 billion than 99% of nothing. And I think that's the reality we need to. Otherwise, we will keep holding on to things like this and keep blaming other people when actually nobody stops us from exploiting them. Add value to the copper you mine. Don't export it to London and then it gets sold back to you. Improve it locally so you can add value to it. Until we do that, then I'm really going to continue being optimistic.
I won't excuse myself. I'm a big believer in if you build it, they will come. And it seems to me that IP is an infrastructure for domestic innovation. And when I hear, Jitane describe the government's efforts to facilitate the commercialization, licensing, development of technologies, that gives me a great deal of confidence that there will be a constituency here in South Africa that will continue to see value in protecting their IP as a facilitator of invention, as a vehicle for cultural expression, and so I think the future looks very bright.
As negative as I may come across, I am sort of very optimistic. But the bottle is always half empty with me. But it never ceases to amaze me how innovative our young people are in South Africa. If you go down in the Cape, Salt River, all the arty areas, the designs, really innovative young people. And we should be encouraging them. And what I feel that we should be doing we should stop claiming to be the victims as Africans. What we really need to do is go to innovation hubs, these places where these young people are producing stuff, and teach them about IP. Tell them that IP protects your products. So when a big European retailer takes your t-shirt and just copies it, you have protection. You don't need to have regard to traditional knowledge and stuff. There's copyright that can protect you probably, or trademarks, or some existing form of intellectual property. We should be telling and educating our young people about the protection that their products already has, and how they can rely on intellectual property to prevent other people exploiting their creations. Because, trust me, we have a lot to offer the world. We shouldn't be crying about people sort of stealing. We should be looking at creating innovation at home and the platform by which it can be taken abroad.
I'm definitely the optimist here because I've seen the opportunities. I can see what we're going for. I can see what we've invested in. I can see what comes from it. I have to agree. I think awareness is very important because we all sit here and we all know what IP means, but there's thousands of people out there that don't know what it is and don't know how to utilize or access that correctly. I also think government is trying to identify infrastructure, to put certain infrastructure in place to make this innovation value chain run quicker, easier. And I'm encouraged to see through this process that we've been, how close government, industry, law firms are starting to work together to tackle this beast that we call intellectual property.
So that's 3.5 optimists. Thank you very much. It just remains for me to say thanks to the Free Market Foundation for their excellent organisational work, for putting this together. It's been very illuminating, and I hope the conversation will continue over lunch, which is taking place in the restaurant over the way on this floor, so please join us there. Thank you very much.